Welcome to Doggy Dogma's online orientation. We appreciate you taking the time to sit through the orientation prior to classes beginning. We've decided to use an online orientation so that we can cover more in classes when everyone can physically be there. This allows people to listen to the orientation at their leisure, but finalise it before they come to class so that everyone's on an equal footing. Just a little bit about us. So Doggy Dogma have been around since 2009. We've been helping people either through private behavioural consultations, so we go to their house and help them with their dog problems, and we also do obviously group classes as well. We have a number of group classes that we run, from puppy school to family manners, what's traditionally known as basic obedience, as well as some fun courses such as agility and flyball. The reason for the orientation is so that you can cover some information prior to class beginning. So we can have an indication of what the expectations are when you come to class. We're going to talk a bit about how dogs learn and how they think as well. We're also going to talk about the types of training that we actually use in class, so that you have a broader and a better understanding of what you're in for when you do turn up. When you come to Doggy Dogma classes, we say that we have two intentions in working with you. Firstly, we want to teach you how to understand your dog, and secondly, we want to teach the dog how to understand you. Without you understanding how your dog thinks and operates, you're starting off on the back foot. If you just think it's about the dog learning to deal with you, it's not. It's about you learning to deal with the dog. So the human equation is often forgotten about in dog training. That's where Doggy Dogma steps in. That's the difference between us and other classes, is we want to ensure that the people element, the human element is covered, and they understand what the training is about, not just how to do the training. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to sit through the orientation prior to classes beginning. It will really put you a step ahead before we sit down and we go through the actual training element. It is very important that we get to finalise the orientation. So even if you can't do it in one sitting, we ask that you come back to it and address it a bit at a time, so that you have a good, clear understanding of what we'll be covering in class and how the training actually works. Thank you. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have a moment, just send me a quick email, or just have a think about currently what your expectations are coming into class. So is there a particular behaviour that you're after your dog to learn, or obviously a behaviour that you'd like your dog to stop, so that we can have a better expectation or understanding of what you would like us to do for you. It's not always just that you want your dog to sit. Dogs sit automatically, but it might be that you want your dog to sit more effectively when you ask it to, or that you'd like to see your dog sit more often without you asking it to. So these kind of things are individual. So if you could take your time and just send us a quick email. The email address, of course, is info@doggydogma.com.au. Then we can understand where you're coming from, and we'll work to meet those expectations for you. Coming to class, of course, is a two-way street. I expect you to have expectations of the class, but I also have some expectations for people who come to my classes. So what I start off with is what we call our owner commitment. It means these are the minimum things that we require you to do to make sure that training in our classes are effective for you and your dog in the real world, as opposed to just in class. I ask you always to practice the exercises at home. Okay, that goes without saying. If you can't practice the exercises at home and you're only using the 1 hour that we're together each week to fulfill the training, you're not going to have adequate responses, and you're kind of wasting your money and my time. So the reality is, it is down to the owners to get the results from their dogs. We set you up, hopefully, to be successful, and you take the steps that you need to take in the real world to get your dog to respond to you in other situations. So taking on from that, you have to have realistic expectations of your dog. They don't know what they don't know. Okay, so these expectations need to be in line with what the dog has been taught and that is where we have to start from with them. We want you to understand that the work that we're doing at the moment is setting your dog up for the rest of its life. So it's not a matter of doing it once, it's a matter of doing it hundreds of times so that your dog starts to understand how to speak English and what you want from it behaviourally day in and day out. Don't be afraid to ask questions and get clarification from me. So in class, expectations, some people don't like to ask questions in front of others, but you don't know if somebody else is having the same experience that you're having. So please always jump in, ask a question, and I will answer it to the best of my ability. If you ask it in a group, then everybody might get that answer that they require, even if they're afraid to ask the question. We're here to build trust with your dog and not control over it. Once you've built trust with an animal, the feeling of control will be there anyway. But we have to understand that they're their own being, so they're going to have their own agenda in life. With some dogs, that's more apparent. So dogs like terriers or bull breed dogs that are traditionally considered difficult to train are only difficult to train because they have their own thought process in life, and they're not there to be biddable as a dog such as a border collie might be. That doesn't make either of those types of dogs or any of those types of dogs dumber than the other. It just means that they have a different motivation in life. Dogs like terriers, for example, like to get on and do their job. They don't have human interference when they're hunting rats and things along those lines. So they don't have to. Aren't naturally bred with a desire to do that job. To listen to us. So by building trust, we get to have that feeling of control, and we will have the responses that we want from our dogs through that process. Okay, and again, we ask you to practice the exercise at home. I repeat it because it's important. Practice the exercises then in your backyard, and then practice your exercises everywhere. The reason why we ask you to do that as a commitment is because your dog doesn't generalize. Your dog will sit perfectly in the lounge room or in the kitchen or in the dining room, but it doesn't mean that your dog is going to sit perfectly out the backyard if it's a different scenario. And it doesn't mean that your dog is going to sit perfectly in the front yard or down the street or in the dog park if you don't practice those exercises with them first. We'll talk a little bit later about a formula when it comes to training to keep your dog's attention on you. And that is probably the most important thing for dog owners to take away, is that the idea that dogs don't generalize their